A great big welcome to the most engaged citizens in the state of Florida. You're watching ECW Live. I'm John Singley, your host, and we're going to continue something today in our series, Walking Dangerously, the dangerous streets our school children have to walk on to get back and forth to school. And to help us unpack that, I've asked Rob Doss, who's the former Director of Transportation for the Escambia School District, to come in and tell us what's wrong with the current state law that's putting our students at risk. Rob, thank you for coming in today.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
So what does the current statute say, and why do you think it needs to be revised?
Well, first of all, I'm maintaining a website that people can go to and read articles about our position on this because it's really a very detailed position. That website is www.SAFESTUDENT.blog. But anyway, the criteria that we're most concerned about centers up on what conditions the state considers to be necessary for them to be considered hazardous for our students. So, for instance, students don't need to have a place to walk off of the roadway unless there is a traffic volume of at least 180 vehicles in each direction. So if you think about this, and if you read the statute, you'll have a hard time making sense of it, but this is what it means. That they don't need to have a walkway off of the roadway unless the traffic volume is at least 180 vehicles in each direction. That's 180 vehicles in the direction that they're walking and 180 vehicles per hour in the opposite direction. That's a total of 360 vehicles per hour, which equates to one vehicle every 10 seconds in each direction. So,
and that's considered safe under the current law?
Yeah, anything less than that's considered safe.
Wow.
So your kids could walk to and from school on the roadway if the traffic volume was less than one vehicle every 10 seconds. And so if you can think about your child doing that, it's really a scary proposition. None of us would want that to happen. In fact, I would say that most of us wouldn't want to walk on that kind of street ourselves or not feel good about it. The second scenario relates to intersections that have stoplights or stop signs or controlled intersections. And in order for those to be considered hazardous, they have to have a traffic volume of at least 4,000 vehicles per hour. 4,000 vehicles per hour. That equates to more than one vehicle passing through that intersection every second. More than one per second. So now, bear in mind that what really makes those intersections dangerous are the left turn lanes, the left turn on green lanes, the right turn on red lanes, the free flow right turn lanes. The complexity of those intersections, those high volume intersections, is really what makes those dangerous. And the third scenario is the mid-block crossing scenario, where students would seemingly cross where there's a crosswalk, and those areas are not considered hazardous unless there's a traffic volume of at least 360 vehicles per hour in each direction. That relates to one vehicle every 5 seconds. So you think about that again. No crossing, no control devices, no signs, no lights, no nothing other than a pedestrian crosswalk, and it's not considered hazardous unless the traffic volume is 1 per 5 seconds. So think about 5 seconds and count it out to yourself, and you see that it's really not enough time for us to feel like we can get across. Mm-hmm. So it's tough to expect students to do that. And one of the reasons why this is concerning to me is that this statute is actually embedded in the education code, and you would expect that the education code would reflect a better understanding or a more comprehensive understanding of the limitations that students encounter in making decisions about some of these really complex and high volume scenarios. So
that's hard to believe.
It
Rob.
is. It is.
It truly is. Anyway, what else?
So if I brought some images, and now this is an example of a controlled intersection, but you see all the things that are going on here, and this is an example of the kind of intersection that you find all over the state, especially in larger areas, larger metro areas, where a lot of things are happening in a very short period of time, and the idea here is to move a lot of traffic quickly. a lot of vehicle traffic quickly. But what gets left out in some of these improvements is the ability to also move pedestrians safely alongside that traffic. The scenario that I mentioned about the free flow right turn lanes and left turn lanes right on red. On the left you see the left on green and the right on red. And you can see that if a pedestrian was walking in the crosswalk, that the driver may not be expecting to see a pedestrian in that crosswalk, because quite often they're looking in the other direction for clearance from vehicle traffic. On the right you see an example of a free flow right turn lane. That's on the right hand side of that screen, or right side of the image on the right side of the screen. And again, people are not typically looking for pedestrians in that scenario. They're looking to merge themselves into traffic, so they're looking over to the left, am I clear, and don't quite see that person stepping off the curb. Now, this is a live example of that free flow, of actually all three of those situations right here in Pensacola. And we have a middle school and an elementary school within walking distance of this intersection. So you see the free flow right turn lane on the lower right part of the intersection, and in all four directions you have left on green, left green arrow, and a right on red option. And so we in Escambia County buses kids across that intersection because it's not safe for them.
Yeah,
to
that's
walk.
Mobile Highway and Michigan.
Right.
Yeah, I'm afraid of that intersection even in my car.
Right.
Let alone school kid trying
So
to
this
cross.
is,
Yeah.
Right. So this is a street level look at that same intersection. You can see how aggressive the traffic pattern is here, I guess, is a way to describe it. So that's really what we're trying to change for the most part. And there are other criteria. We want to simplify the process for claiming hazardous walking conditions for school districts, because right now it's a bit complex, a bit difficult for them, time consuming, and we want to make it easier for them to identify those situations so that they don't have to make a decision not to transport those kids or not to claim the state funding for transporting those eligible students. And so with those improvements, I believe the statute would be in better shape, and the kids would be safer as well.
You've been researching data,
Yeah.
facts about pedestrian and traffic safety throughout the state of Florida here. What have you learned recently?
Well, I sat in on the interview you did with
the trooper.
Right,
Cannon.
Lieutenant Cannon.
Yeah.
And he was talking about the data that they have, and so I went to the data to see what was there, and I was looking at their pedestrian fatalities, the pedestrian fatality rates per 100,000 residents among the large Florida counties. Now, by large Florida counties, I'm talking about counties that have 200,000 or more residents, and was interested to see that Escambia County, I don't think we would normally expect that. We expect to see maybe Miami-Dade up there, but it was Escambia County was at the top of the list. Osceola, Orange County, Manatee, Pinellas. So you see the listing of the top 10 there. Some of them are surprises, some of them not so much of a surprise, but nonetheless really high figure. You know, it's not just surprising who's on the list is what it is that the counties that are not on the list. So it would bear some, I think it would be useful to understand why some are on and some are off. What's the difference between these counties? So I'd be careful about drawing too many conclusions from the data, except to say that it's worth probing and understanding why. Way over here on the west end of the state, where we don't have a super concentration of tourists and lollygaggers, and we have a high volume of citizens who walk to work. Why is it that we're in that list at all, especially at the top spot? And then the National Complete Streets Coalition every year puts out a report called Dangerous by Design, and they rank the most dangerous metropolitan areas for walking in the United States. So these are the top 10 in the United States. What's really disconcerting about this is that 8 of the 10 are in Florida. And so that same report found that Florida is the most dangerous state for pedestrians. So clearly there's some point of concern about pedestrian safety in Florida. So I look at the Florida hazardous walking conditions statute for students, and I see that we need to make sure that our students don't get caught up in the same trouble that regular pedestrians are getting caught up in terms of their exposure to those hazards.
Yeah, that's a great point, right?
We at least consider those things.
Yeah.
Here's another data point that the National Complete Streets Coalition compiled. They compiled the top 100 most dangerous congressional districts for walking, and then of the top 100, all but 2 of Florida's congressional districts rank in that top 100. But here you see the top 25. So half of them, almost half of them, are Florida districts. And you see, again, Escambia, the first congressional district, is number 25.
We're talking with Rob Dawes, who publishes a blog called SAFESTUDENT.blog, and he is in studio with us today, clearly. If you have any comments or questions for Rob, you can certainly put them on as a post to comment to our page, and I'm sure Rob would respond to them as he saw them.
Sure.
So, Rob, let's continue here.
Well, that last slide, the congressional districts, this is a map that shows where those congressional districts are located. So you don't see them up in the Northeast around New York City. You don't see them up in the Midwest. You don't see them in the coastal California areas either. You see that most of those congressional districts, in terms of number, are in Florida, and the large areas that you see in eastern California and in Arizona there are really large geographically.
That's pretty amazing. You think of California as a car-centric state. That's been my experience.
Right.
But yet it's not in the most dangerous congressional districts.
And I think that the trick there is to implement measures that find a way to move vehicles safely and smoothly, quickly, at the same time that you consider pedestrians in that equation. And
what are we looking at
this
here?
This is the same chart, just focused in on the state of Florida, so you can see where those congressional districts are. So we saw that Escambia County was high on the was number 1 on the pedestrian casualty list. You saw that, but you saw that it also wasn't one of the most dangerous metro areas. But Escambia County nonetheless ranks very high on the most dangerous congressional districts list. So it's interesting that the entire congressional district made it to the top 25 list, as well as some others. So a lot of people think that, well, it's because Florida is a big tourist destination and so forth. But you know what? You don't see some of those tourist destinations are highlighted on that map, and you see some that are, but some that aren't. And you also see other counties that are other counties and congressional districts that are not.
Well, Rob, that's an interesting set of data you presented. The Studer Community Institute says quite frequently you only get what you measure, and they publish these dashboards of progress within the community. You'd think this might be something they'd want to measure, but in any case, thank you for measuring this and bringing it to our attention.
As I said before, I think that what we want to do with data is to use it to understand that there's something worth digging into here, not necessarily that it has a causal linkage, a direct causal linkage, but that it's worth paying attention to and exploring more deeply. I think the data shows that there is plenty to be concerned about, but one thing that is very clear is that the statute itself, the hazardous walking conditions statute, needs to be fixed.
And you've been an advocate now for some months on this. That means you're talking to legislators.
Yes.
And you've published articles in some newspapers around the state. And I also saw where our own Pensacola News Journal, a member of the Gannett chain, syndicated your article recently to the other Gannett papers, Florida Today and others throughout the state. Talk a little bit about how that's going for you and what's the future look like.
Well, it's going very well. I think that when you propose something like this, you're always going to run into cynics who say, well, what's the point, or how many people are getting killed? And I guess we're disappointed when when the county or the state won't install a stoplight until people get killed, but we kind of approach it that way ourselves sometimes. But I look at these things and I put the word out, and a lot of people are concerned about whether or not it's more of the same. In the past, there have been measures proposed that have not quite addressed the hazardous walking conditions criteria itself directly. Mm-hmm. So this proposal does that. It actually does exactly what I say it does, and it doesn't have any other agendas. It's not trying to kill two birds with one stone. Mm-hmm. Really, just trying to get this one thing taken care of and get it right. What I found is that once people understand what's in the current statute and then what's in the proposal that I'm pushing out there, they like the proposal. And I'm finding this across the state. We've seen school districts change their approach and their attitude about this because they've been concerned about how much it would cost them to implement something like this. And I explained to them that this proposal that I'm putting out there has no mandates for school districts. They're understandably concerned that a change to the statute may include mandates that require them to buy more buses, hire more employees, and have to absorb a much higher operational footprint. And my proposal doesn't do that. It allows local jurisdictions to figure out for themselves where their needs are and to address those needs appropriately as they see fit.
Rob Doss, advocate for child safety in the schools and their walking conditions. Rob, we're about to wrap it up here, but I got one more thing I want to bring up. I just saw recently where our friends in Hillsborough County, the Tampa-St. Pete area, I guess it's their county commissioners, one group down there has decided that you're absolutely right, and they passed a resolution that says they want this statute to be revised. Tell us what you know about what's going on in Hillsborough County.
I saw that I saw the same thing you're talking about. It's the Hillsborough School District has come out and said that, and the superintendent's been out there publicly saying that it's high time. It's been almost half a century since the statute's been revised, and obviously the pedestrian conditions have changed considerably over that time. Now I say revised, since it's been overhauled. So they want it overhauled because it's not safe for our kids, and they have come out publicly and said that something needs to be done.
What price the life of a child walking to school? Our guest today has been Rob Doss, who publishes the SAFESTUDENT.blog. Rob, thank you for being with us today, and we wish you the very best in your quest here to get this law updated to make it safer for not only the children but all the adults too that walk back and forth with their children to school. Any parting shots, parting thoughts here for?
No, I encourage people to go to that website and read the articles, and bring those concerns that they have to the attention of their legislators, and hopefully we'll get this thing done.
Thank you, citizens. You've been with Rob Doss and John Singley this afternoon. We wish you the very best, and we'll be back soon with more in our continuing series on ECW Live. Thank you.